A disabled baby would not leave her dog's side, and what the German Shepherd did next created a miracle. But this isn't just a cute story. This is the moment everything in one mother's world went from normal to terrifying. Her fragile baby could barely move, and the only thing keeping her calm was the giant dog lying protectively beside her. Everyone said the dog was a danger. Everyone tried to pull them apart. But then, something strange started happening. The dog wasn't just guarding the baby. He was teaching her, guiding her, doing things no one could explain. And when a shocking crisis hit their home, the truth about this dog's past, and what he was trying to do, burst into the open. This was more than loyalty, more than instinct. It was a secret the world never expected. Why was this dog fighting so hard for this child? And what miracle was he trying to prepare her for? I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Type it down below, and while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The morning light filtered softly through the nursery curtains as Brielle Lawson gently lifted her baby daughter from her crib. Every movement had to be careful, measured, as if handling the most delicate crystal. In many ways, that's exactly what Amelia was. Fragile and precious beyond measure. "Easy does it, sweet girl," Brielle whispered, cradling Amelia close to her chest. At her feet, Kaiser, their German Shepherd, rose from his sleeping position with watchful eyes fixed on the baby. He never strayed far from Amelia, not even during the night. The dark circles under Brielle's eyes told the story of countless sleepless nights spent worrying, watching, and wondering. Being a single mother was hard enough, but caring for a child with osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bone disease, meant every moment could bring heartbreak. One wrong move, one seemingly harmless bump could result in another fracture. "Kaiser, come," she called softly, though she hardly needed to. The large shepherd was already padding alongside her as she carried Amelia to the changing table. His tall frame reached the height of the table, allowing him to keep his gentle watch over the baby. As Brielle carefully changed Amelia's diaper, Kaiser's nose twitched at every small sound or movement the baby made. "You're such a good boy," Brielle murmured, watching as Kaiser's ears perked up at Amelia's quiet coo. "What would we do without you?" The morning routine had become a delicate dance, one that Brielle performed with the precision of a surgeon and the tenderness of a mother's touch. Changing clothes required special care to avoid putting too much pressure on Amelia's fragile limbs. The baby's thin arms and legs, supported by tiny braces, seemed so impossibly delicate. As she worked, Brielle's mind wandered to the upcoming hospital visit. Another fracture, this one from nothing more than a slight movement during sleep, meant another round of questioning looks from medical staff, another session of explaining Kaiser's presence, another battle to keep him by Amelia's side. "They just don't understand, do they?" She spoke softly to Kaiser, who looked up at her with knowing brown eyes. "They don't see how you know exactly when she needs help, how you warn us before she even cries." It was true. Kaiser had developed an almost supernatural ability to sense when Amelia was in distress. He would whine softly before she showed any signs of discomfort, giving Brielle precious extra seconds to adjust her position or support her differently. In the 6 months since Amelia's birth, he had proven himself more valuable than any medical monitor. Brielle carefully dressed Amelia in a soft, loose-fitting onesie, making sure not to catch any fabric on her braces. The baby's large eyes, so full of trust and innocence, followed Kaiser's movements as he circled the changing table, his usual morning patrol. "Time for breakfast, sweet girl," Brielle announced, lifting Amelia with practiced care. Kaiser followed them to the kitchen, where Brielle had already prepared everything one-handed. a skill she'd mastered out of necessity. The shepherd settled at her feet as she sat in the rocking chair to feed Amelia. These quiet moments were precious, but Brielle couldn't shake the anxiety about the upcoming hospital visit. The last time, a nurse had tried to insist that Kaiser wait outside. The argument that followed had left Brielle in tears, though she'd stood her ground. Kaiser had stayed. "They'll try again today," she said to Kaiser, who rested his head on her knee while watching Amelia. "But we won't let them separate you two, will we?" Kaiser's tail thumped once against the floor, a gentle sound, as even his movements seemed measured around Amelia. The bond between the dog and baby had been immediate and profound. From the moment they'd brought Amelia home from the hospital, Kaiser had appointed himself her guardian. He slept beneath her crib, alerted Brielle to every need, and somehow seemed to know exactly how to move around the fragile baby without ever risking harm. After feeding, Brielle placed Amelia in her specially padded bouncer seat while she prepared for their hospital visit. Kaiser immediately settled beside the seat, his body creating a protective barrier between the baby and the rest of the world. "Watch her for a minute," Brielle said unnecessarily. Kaiser hadn't taken his eyes off Amelia. She quickly packed the diaper bag with extra supplies, knowing hospital visits could stretch for hours. Every item was carefully chosen to make their time there more comfortable, including Kaiser's service vest, though he wasn't officially registered. They'd never needed it before. His natural intelligence and impeccable behavior had always spoken for themselves. Amelia made a small sound, and Kaiser's head lifted immediately. Brielle watched as her daughter's tiny hand reached out, her fingers brushing against Kaiser's fur. The shepherd remained perfectly still, allowing the touch with infinite patience. These small interactions never failed to bring tears to Brielle's eyes, tears of gratitude for this gentle giant who had become such an essential part of their lives. "Okay, team," Brielle said, wiping her eyes and picking up Amelia's car seat. "Let's get this over with." The process of securing Amelia in her car seat was another carefully choreographed routine. Kaiser watched every movement, his presence both comforting and steadying as Brielle's tired hands worked the straps with practiced care. The baby's braces meant extra attention to padding and positioning, making sure nothing pressed too hard against her delicate bones. As Brielle carried the car seat to the door, Kaiser was already waiting, his leash in his mouth. Despite her anxiety about the upcoming appointment, she couldn't help but smile. They were in this together, mother, daughter, and devoted shepherd, facing whatever challenges lay ahead as a family. Loading everyone into the car took time, but Brielle had learned patience. Kaiser waited for his command before jumping into the back seat, settling beside Amelia's car seat in his usual position. From there, he could watch her face and alert Brielle if anything was wrong during the drive. "Remember when I thought having a big dog would be too much work with a baby?" Brielle spoke softly as she started the car. In the rearview mirror, she could see Kaiser's steady presence beside Amelia's car seat. "I've never been so happy to be wrong." The drive to the hospital was quiet, punctuated only by Amelia's occasional soft sounds and Kaiser's reassuring presence. Brielle's hands gripped the steering wheel tightly, her mind already preparing for the battles that might lie ahead. But when she glanced in the mirror again, seeing Kaiser's unwavering attention to her daughter, she felt stronger. They were more than pet and family. They were a team, bound together by love and necessity. Kaiser wasn't just a dog. He was Amelia's protector, her constant companion, and in many ways, her best chance at navigating her challenging condition with confidence and security. As they pulled into the hospital parking lot, Brielle took a deep breath. "Okay, Kaiser," she said, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "Time to show them again why you belong with us." The shepherd's steady gaze told her he understood completely. He would stay by Amelia's side, just as he had every day since she came home. Guardian and friend to the fragile baby who had captured his heart. Brielle pushed through the automatic doors of Children's Memorial Hospital, carefully balancing Amelia's car seat, while Kaiser walked perfectly at heel. The familiar antiseptic smell hit her nose as they entered the bustling lobby, its walls decorated with cheerful murals that did little to ease her growing tension. They hadn't made it 10 steps before a security guard approached, his hand already raised in a stopping gesture. "Ma'am, I'll need to see service animal documentation." "He's Amelia's support animal," Brielle explained, shifting the heavy car seat to her other arm. "He's been here before." "New policy," the guard interrupted, pointing to a freshly mounted sign. "All animals must have proper certification." Before Brielle could respond, a tall figure in a white coat strode toward them. Dr. Conrad Haskins carried himself with the rigid authority of someone used to having the final word. His polished shoes clicked against the floor as he approached, and his face wore an expression of practiced neutrality that didn't quite mask his disapproval. "Ms. Lawson," he said, consulting the chart in his hands without making eye contact. "I see you've brought the dog again. I'm afraid he won't be permitted in the pediatric intensive care area today." Brielle's heart began to race. "Dr. Haskins, Kaiser has always been allowed to stay with Amelia. He keeps her calm during procedures." "The policy exists for a reason," Haskins cut in, his tone clipped. "We can't risk contamination or injury in sensitive areas. Security will escort him out." 2 more guards appeared, and Kaiser pressed closer to Amelia's car seat, his eyes never leaving her face. Brielle could see her daughter beginning to stir, tiny fingers reaching for the familiar comfort of her protector. "Please," Brielle said, her voice cracking. "He's not just a pet. Amelia needs him." "What Amelia needs is proper medical care," Haskins interrupted again, gesturing to the guards. "Remove the animal." One guard reached for Kaiser's collar, but the shepherd deftly moved away, maintaining his position beside Amelia. The baby's eyes opened, and seeing strangers reaching toward her dog, she began to cry, a sound that always tied Brielle's stomach in knots, knowing how even the strain of crying could hurt her daughter's fragile bones. "Stop!" Brielle pleaded. "You're upsetting her." But the guards persisted, one grabbing Kaiser's collar while another tried to loop a catchpole around his neck. The shepherd didn't growl or resist, but neither would he move away from Amelia, who was now crying harder. They managed to pull Kaiser back a few feet, and that's when everything went wrong. Amelia's cries turned to screams, her face reddening dangerously. The monitors attached to her portable equipment began to shriek, heart rate climbing, oxygen levels dropping. In that moment of chaos, Kaiser acted. With a quick duck and twist that somehow avoided hurting anyone, he slipped free of both guards. Instead of running away, he made straight for Amelia, who had been placed on an exam bed during the struggle. Before anyone could stop him, he wedged himself beneath the bed, pressing close enough for Amelia to feel his presence, but staying clear of any medical equipment. The effect was immediate and stunning. Amelia's cries softened to hiccups, then ceased entirely. The monitors steadied, their angry beeping fading to normal rhythms. The baby's tiny hand dangled down, finding Kaiser's fur, and her whole body relaxed. The medical staff stared in disbelief, but Dr. Haskins's face darkened. "This is exactly the kind of situation we can't have," he said sharply. "The dog is clearly a risk factor, interfering with medical equipment, creating chaos." "He's not creating chaos, he's preventing it!" Brielle protested, pointing to the now steady monitors. "Look at her numbers. Look at how calm she is now." "Ms. Lawson." Haskins's voice took on an edge that made Brielle's skin crawl. "Let me be perfectly clear. This hospital has strict policies regarding animals in treatment areas. They exist to protect all our patients, not just your daughter. If you insist on bringing this unauthorized animal to appointments, We will have no choice but to deny treatment." The words hit Brielle like a physical blow. "You're saying I have to choose between my daughter's medical care and the dog who helps keep her alive?" "I'm saying we have protocols that must be followed." Haskins straightened his coat, his expression unyielding. "Remove the dog, or we'll have to refer Amelia to another facility, though I doubt you'll find any reputable hospital that will allow an uncertified animal in their pediatric ward." Brielle looked down at her daughter, now peaceful with Kaiser nearby, then back at the doctor who held their medical care hostage. The cruelty of the choice before her made her hands shake. Kaiser had been by Amelia's side since birth, through countless fractures and procedures. He somehow knew when she was about to move wrong, preventing countless injuries. He could sense her needs before she cried, keeping her calm and still when movement could mean another broken bone. "This isn't right," she whispered, tears burning her eyes. "He helps her. Anyone can see that." "What I see," Haskins replied coldly, "is a liability waiting to happen. Make your choice, Ms. Lawson. The dog goes, or you do." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Brielle stood frozen, caught between impossible options. Kaiser remained exactly where he was, steady and calm beneath Amelia's bed, while her baby girl's fingers stayed tangled in his fur, a living picture of the bond these people were trying to break. The tension in the hospital room thickened when Sarah Mitchell, the hospital's social worker, entered with a manila folder clutched to her chest. Her sensible shoes squeaked against the linoleum as she approached Brielle, who still stood protectively near Amelia's bed, where Kaiser remained underneath. "Ms. Lawson," Sarah began, her voice carrying that particular blend of professional concern that made Brielle's stomach tighten. "I understand there's a situation with an unauthorized animal in the pediatric ward." "His name is Kaiser," Brielle said firmly, "and he's not just an animal, he's essential to Amelia's well-being." Sarah's lips pressed into a thin line as she opened her folder. "I need to make you aware of some concerns. Refusing to comply with hospital safety protocols could be seen as putting your daughter at risk. As a mandated reporter, I'm obligated to inform Child Protective Services of any situations that might compromise a child's medical care." The implied threat hung heavy in the air. Brielle's heart hammered against her ribs as she looked from the social worker to Dr. Haskins, who stood by with an expression of manufactured concern. "Are you threatening to take my daughter away because I want to keep her dog with her?" Brielle's voice shook with disbelief and anger. "We're simply concerned about Amelia's best interests," Sarah replied smoothly. "Making decisions that could jeopardize her access to medical care raises red flags." Brielle looked down at Amelia, peaceful and content with Kaiser near. In that moment, something inside her snapped. The weight of years fighting the system, of watching her daughter suffer through separations that the hospital deemed necessary, of being treated like an obstacle rather than a mother, it all crystallized into a single, clear decision. "I want the AMA forms," she said quietly. "I'm sorry?" Dr. Haskins stepped forward. "Against medical advice forms," Brielle clarified, her voice stronger now. "I'm taking my daughter home." The social worker's eyes widened. "Ms. Lawson, I strongly advise against—" "Get me the forms!" Brielle was already gathering Amelia's things, her hands steady despite her racing heart. "Now!" The next 30 minutes passed in a blur of paperwork and warnings. Brielle signed form after form, acknowledging the risks of leaving, barely hearing the dire predictions of complications and the repeated mentions of documentation for the record. Kaiser emerged from under the bed only when Brielle had Amelia secured in her car seat. The drive home was silent, except for Amelia's soft breathing and Kaiser's occasional shifting in the back seat. Doubt crept in with every mile marker, fear wrapping cold fingers around Brielle's heart. Had she just made a terrible mistake? Would they really call CPS? The thought of losing Amelia made her hands shake on the steering wheel. But when they walked through their front door, the rightness of her decision became clear. Amelia, who had been tense despite Kaiser's presence in the car, melted into complete relaxation as soon as they were home. Kaiser settled onto his bed next to Amelia's playmat, and the baby reached for him with complete trust, her eyes bright and happy. As evening fell, Brielle sat at her kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee, staring at her phone. 3 missed calls from Tristan. Her ex must have already heard about the hospital incident. He had always criticized her excessive attachment to Kaiser, had called her overprotective and paranoid. Now she could just imagine what he would say about this latest development. The phone buzzed again, Tristan's name lighting up the screen. Brielle let it go to voicemail, then played the message. "What the hell were you thinking?" His voice crackled with anger. "The hospital called me. You walked out with Amelia against medical advice because of that damn dog? I warned you about this, Brielle. You're not thinking straight. I'm calling my lawyer first thing tomorrow. This is exactly why I've been saying Amelia needs stable care." Brielle deleted the message before it finished, her hand trembling. Now she faced not just the hospital's bureaucracy, but also Tristan's threats. He had barely been present in Amelia's life, showing up only when it suited him, but he never missed a chance to criticize Brielle's parenting or threaten custody action. In the living room, Amelia made a happy gurgling sound. Brielle walked over to find her daughter patting Kaiser's nose with perfect gentleness, the dog's eyes soft with devotion. The sight strengthened her resolve. This was what she was fighting for, not just Kaiser's presence, but Amelia's right to the comfort and protection he provided. Brielle sank down beside them, running her fingers through Kaiser's fur. "We'll figure this out," she whispered, as much to herself as to them. "Whatever it takes, we'll find a way to keep our family together." Kaiser's tail thumped once against the floor, and Amelia smiled, a pure, joyful expression that made all the fear and uncertainty worth it. They were home. They were together. And for now, that had to be enough. The early morning sunlight did little to warm the chill in Brielle's bones as she walked along the neighborhood sidewalk. Kaiser padded faithfully beside her, matching his pace to hers, while Amelia slept peacefully in her stroller. The familiar route usually helped clear her mind, but today her thoughts kept circling back to Tristan's threatening voicemail and the stack of hospital forms on her kitchen counter. "At least we've got each other, right, boy?" she murmured, reaching down to scratch behind Kaiser's ears. The German Shepherd looked up at her with those understanding brown eyes, then suddenly stumbled. His legs gave out completely, and he collapsed onto the concrete with a whimper that made Brielle's heart stop. "Kaiser!" She dropped to her knees beside him, hands trembling as they ran over his body. His breathing was labored, and his eyes had gone glassy with pain. Panic seized her chest. "Oh God, oh God!" Amelia stirred in her stroller, making small, worried sounds as she sensed the distress. Brielle's mind raced. Dr. Porter's veterinary clinic was only 3 blocks away, but Kaiser weighed nearly 80 pounds. How could she get him there? As if reading her thoughts, Kaiser tried to stand, his legs shaking with effort. Brielle quickly pulled out her phone and dialed the clinic's number. "Valley View Veterinary, how can I—" "This is Brielle Lawson," she cut in, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Kaiser just collapsed during our walk. We're 3 blocks away on Maple Street. Please, I need help getting him to the clinic." Within minutes, Dr. Porter's assistant arrived in the clinic van. Together they carefully lifted Kaiser onto a stretcher, while Brielle managed the stroller. The drive to the clinic took less than 2 minutes, but it felt like hours as Kaiser's breathing grew more labored. Dr. Inez Porter was waiting at the entrance, her usual warm expression replaced with professional concern. She helped guide the stretcher into an exam room, immediately hooking Kaiser up to monitoring equipment, while Brielle settled Amelia's stroller in the corner. "Tell me exactly what happened," Dr. Porter said, her hands moving efficiently as she examined Kaiser. Brielle described the morning walk, the sudden collapse. Her voice broke as she added, "He's never had anything like this before. He's always been so healthy, so strong." Dr. Porter's face grew grave as she listened to Kaiser's heart through her stethoscope. She moved methodically through the examination, taking X-rays and running tests while Brielle watched, her stomach knotting tighter with each passing minute. Finally, Dr. Porter straightened up with a heavy sigh. "Brielle, I need you to sit down for this." The word sent ice through Brielle's veins, but she lowered herself into a chair, pulling Amelia's stroller close. Kaiser lay on the exam table, his eyes fixed on them despite his obvious exhaustion. "Kaiser has advanced dilated cardiomyopathy, a severe form of heart disease," Dr. Porter explained gently. "His heart is enlarged and isn't pumping efficiently. The collapse was likely due to the exertion of the walk, which his heart simply couldn't handle." Brielle felt the room spin slightly. But he was fine yesterday. How could we not have known?" "Dogs are incredibly good at hiding illness, especially working dogs like Kaiser. They'll push through discomfort until they physically can't anymore." Dr. Porter's eyes were kind but honest. "The disease has progressed significantly. Any physical strain could trigger another episode, and the next one could be fatal." The implications hit Brielle like a physical blow. Kaiser was Amelia's protector, her constant companion. He needed to be active, alert, ready to help at a moment's notice. But now... "What are our options?" she whispered. Dr. Porter sat down across from her. "We can try medication to help manage the condition, but it won't cure it. He'll need to stay very calm, no excitement, no exertion, and even then..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Given how advanced the disease is, we may need to consider quality-of-life decisions soon." Euthanasia. The unspoken word hung heavy in the air. Brielle felt tears spill down her cheeks as she looked at Kaiser, who had raised his head at her distress, still trying to comfort her even in his weakened state. As if on cue, her phone buzzed. Another message from Tristan. "My lawyer will be filing emergency custody papers this afternoon. That stunt at the Azua hospital was the last straw. You're putting Amelia at risk, and I won't stand for it anymore." A sob caught in Brielle's throat. Everything was falling apart. Kaiser was dying. Tristan was trying to take Amelia. The hospital was probably building a case against her. And at the center of it all was her precious daughter, who needed both her mother and her faithful protector. Dr. Porter watched the emotions play across Brielle's face. "There's something else going on, isn't there?" Through tears, Brielle explained the hospital confrontation, Tristan's threats, the impossible situation she found herself in. Dr. Porter listened without judgment, her expression thoughtful. "The medication might buy us some time," she said finally. "But you need to understand. Keeping Kaiser with Amelia means accepting that any day could be his last. The stress of his protective duties could literally stop his heart." "But separating them could break both their hearts," Brielle whispered, watching as Amelia reached toward Kaiser from her stroller, making the soft cooing sound reserved just for him. Despite his condition, Kaiser's tail thumped weakly against the exam table. Dr. Porter nodded. "That's the choice you're facing. There's no easy answer here, Brielle. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. But you need to be prepared for what's coming." Brielle stood on shaky legs and moved to Kaiser's side, burying her face in his fur as she had so many times before when life felt overwhelming. His familiar scent grounded her, even as his rapid heartbeat under her hand reminded her of the crisis at hand. "Can we take him home today?" she asked finally, her voice rough with tears. Yes, but with strict restrictions. I'll give you the medication and detailed care instructions. Dr. Porter squeezed her shoulder gently. Take it one day at a time. That's all any of us can do. As they helped Kaiser down from the exam table, his legs steadier but still weak, Brielle felt the weight of impossible choices bearing down on her. Keep Kaiser with Amelia and watch him potentially work himself to death, or separate them and break both their spirits. Fight Tristan's custody battle while also fighting the hospital system. Navigate her daughter's medical needs while protecting the bond that seemed to give Amelia the most strength. Kaiser pressed against her leg, offering support even now, and Brielle knew with crushing certainty that she couldn't give up on him. Not yet. Not while he was still fighting so hard to fulfill his purpose, to protect the little girl who loved him more than anything in the world. Dr. Porter handed her a bag of medications and a thick packet of instructions. Call me any time, day or night. We'll figure this out together. Brielle nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She carefully loaded Amelia's stroller into her car while Dr. Porter's assistant helped Kaiser into the back seat. The German Shepherd settled heavily onto his side, but his eyes remained fixed on Amelia, watchful as ever. The drive home was silent except for the sound of Kaiser's labored breathing and Amelia's occasional happy babbles, unaware of the crisis unfolding around her. Brielle's phone buzzed repeatedly with messages from Tristan's lawyer, but she couldn't bring herself to look at them. Not yet. Not while she was still trying to process the fact that Kaiser, their rock, their protector, their family, was slipping away. Pulling into her driveway, Brielle's mind was still reeling from the devastating news about Kaiser's heart condition. She carefully lifted Amelia from her car seat, while Kaiser slowly made his way out of the car, his movements more labored than usual. Despite his obvious fatigue, his eyes never left Amelia. Inside their modest home, Brielle settled Amelia onto her playmat in the living room, surrounding her with soft cushions as she always did. Kaiser, instead of lying down to rest as Brielle expected, seemed to find new energy. She watched, puzzled, as he moved with deliberate purpose toward the collection of therapy items their physical therapist had left. Kaiser, honey, you should rest, Brielle called softly, but the German Shepherd paid no attention. With careful precision, Kaiser nudged one of the colorful therapy blocks toward Amelia. It wasn't a random action. He positioned it exactly within her reach, then lay down beside her, his body creating a stable support. Amelia's eyes lit up with interest, her tiny hands reaching for the block. "What are you doing, boy?" Brielle whispered, watching in amazement. Kaiser wasn't finished. He got up again, this time retrieving a soft blanket from Amelia's nearby basket. He dragged it over and arranged it so one corner was easily graspable for Amelia's delicate fingers. The little girl cooed with delight, her hands finding purchase on the fabric. Brielle sat down heavily on the couch, transfixed by the scene unfolding before her. This wasn't random play. Kaiser's actions were methodical, almost therapeutic. When Amelia showed signs of wanting to roll slightly, Kaiser immediately positioned himself as a brace, his body providing the perfect support for her movement. "That's incredible," a deep voice spoke from the doorway. Brielle startled, turning to find Ronan Blake, her next-door neighbor, standing in the open doorframe. She'd forgotten she'd left the door ajar in her distraction. "Sorry," Ronan apologized, his paramedic uniform still on from his shift. "I saw you coming home and wanted to check if everything was okay. You seemed upset earlier." Brielle nodded, gesturing for him to come in. "It's Kaiser," she explained, her voice catching. "He has heart disease. It's advanced." Ronan's face softened with concern as he watched Kaiser, who was now guiding Amelia's hand toward another therapy tool with gentle nudges. "How long has he been doing this?" he asked, his tone curious. "The heart condition?" "No, this therapy work. These aren't random behaviors, Brielle. He's using recognized physical therapy assistance techniques." Brielle blinked in surprise. "What do you mean?" Ronan moved closer, crouching down to observe Kaiser's movements. "Look at how he's positioning himself. That's a standard bracing technique. And the way he's presenting objects to encourage reaching and grasping, that's therapeutic facilitation. I've seen it before in my work, but usually with trained service animals." Kaiser looked up briefly at Ronan's presence before returning his attention to Amelia, who was now gripping the blanket while using his steady form as support. "But Kaiser's he's just our family dog," Brielle said, though even as the words left her mouth, she questioned them. "We got him from a shelter right before Amelia was born." Ronan shook his head slowly. "No, these aren't instinctive behaviors. This dog has training, specialized training." He paused, thinking. "Wait a minute. What shelter did you get him from?" "The one over on Pine Street. They said he was surrendered by some medical facility, but they didn't have details." Ronan's eyes widened with recognition. "Medical facility? Was this about 3 years ago?" Brielle nodded, leaning forward. "What do you know?" "There was this program," Ronan explained, his voice taking on an urgent tone. "At Children's Memorial, they were training service dogs specifically for pediatric patients with mobility issues and brittle bone conditions. It was revolutionary stuff. The dogs were taught to detect potential hazards, provide physical support, even assist with therapeutic exercises." "What happened to it?" Brielle asked, though something in her gut told her she already knew the answer wouldn't be good. "The program was suddenly shut down. There were rumors about budget cuts and liability concerns, but nothing official was ever announced. All the dogs in training were quietly dispersed to various shelters." Ronan watched as Kaiser gently repositioned another therapy tool for Amelia. "This isn't just any dog, Brielle. Kaiser was trained for exactly this, to help children like Amelia." The revelation hit Brielle like a physical force. All this time, Kaiser's extraordinary bond with Amelia, his seemingly intuitive understanding of her needs, his precise protective behaviors. It wasn't just natural instinct. He had been specifically trained for this exact purpose, only to have that purpose denied by the very system that was now trying to separate him from Amelia. "The hospital," she whispered, pieces clicking into place. "They must know. That's why they're so adamant about keeping him out. They don't want anyone asking questions about why a specially trained service dog ended up in a shelter." "It would explain a lot," Ronan agreed, his expression grim. "Including why they're treating him like a liability instead of an asset." Tears welled in Brielle's eyes as she watched Kaiser, still faithfully guiding Amelia, through what she now recognized as therapeutic movements, even as his own heart was failing. "He never stopped," she said softly. "Even when they threw him away, he never stopped trying to fulfill his purpose." Kaiser looked up at her then, his brown eyes full of intelligence and devotion, before turning back to Amelia, who was making another attempt to grasp a therapy ring with his encouragement. The sight of them together, her fragile daughter, and this extraordinary dog, who had found his way to exactly where he was meant to be, filled Brielle with a mix of gratitude and determination. "We have to protect him," she said firmly, looking at Ronan. "Not just for Amelia's sake, but because what they did to him, to this program, it isn't right." Ronan nodded, his face set with resolve. "I'll help you. I have contacts at other hospitals, people who might remember the program. We can start gathering evidence, build a case." "Thank you," Brielle whispered, watching as Kaiser settled beside Amelia, his body curved protectively around her while she played with the therapy tools he had so carefully arranged. The truth of his background had been buried, but his dedication had never wavered. Now, even with his heart failing, he was still fighting to fulfill the purpose he was trained for, to help a child like Amelia not just survive, but thrive. "There's more," Ronan said, his voice dropping lower as he settled into the chair across from Brielle. "The program didn't just end, it was deliberately buried. I did some digging after seeing Kaiser's behavior, made some calls to old colleagues." Brielle felt her heart race. "What did you find?" "There was a negligence case 3 years ago. A child was injured, not seriously, but enough to spook administration. Instead of reviewing and improving protocols, they shut everything down. And guess who was behind that decision?" "Dr. Haskins," Brielle whispered, the name tasting bitter on her tongue. Ronan nodded grimly. "He was newly promoted to head of pediatrics. Rather than risk any liability or negative press, he terminated the entire program. All records were sealed, the dogs were dispersed, and everyone involved was pressured to stay quiet." Brielle watched Kaiser guiding Amelia's hands toward a soft ball, encouraging her to grip and release. "This isn't just about one dog anymore, is it?" "No," Ronan agreed. "It's about a system that prioritizes protecting itself over helping children. Kaiser isn't just a miracle that wandered into your life. He's evidence of what they tried to hide." The next morning, Brielle called Dr. Porter, who arrived with her medical camera and notebook. The veterinarian's face lit up watching Kaiser work with Amelia. "This is remarkable," Dr. Porter said, carefully documenting Kaiser's movements. "See how he positions himself? He's creating a safe space for her to practice reaching motions. The way he adjusts his stance when she leans, that's specialized training." They spent hours recording every interaction, Kaiser demonstrating gentle therapeutic exercises, Amelia, encouraged by his presence, attempting movements she'd never tried before. When she managed to grasp a soft ring and hold it for 30 seconds, tears streamed down Brielle's face. "We need to document everything," Dr. Porter insisted, her usually practical voice thick with emotion. "Times, dates, progress measurements, every milestone, no matter how small." Ronan contributed his medical expertise, helping them use proper terminology and structure their observations. "The more professional and detailed our documentation, the harder it will be for them to dismiss," he explained. But as Amelia made progress, Tristan escalated his attacks. His lawyers sent threatening letters, demanding Kaiser's removal from the home. "That dog is a liability," Tristan's voice crackled through Brielle's phone. "You're putting our daughter at risk. I'm filing for emergency custody." "He's helping her," Brielle shot back, watching Amelia practice sitting up with Kaiser's steady support. "She's stronger every day. You'd know that if you ever bothered to visit." "The hospital agrees with me. They've documented their concerns. You're being reckless and emotional." "I'm being a mother," Brielle said firmly, "and I'm done letting you or anyone else bully me into ignoring what's best for our daughter." After hanging up, she sank onto the couch, exhausted. Ronan, who'd been quietly observing from the kitchen, brought her a cup of tea. "You're doing the right thing," he said softly. "We're building a real case here. Dr. Porter's documentation is bulletproof, and I've found 2 former program workers willing to talk." "I'm scared," Brielle admitted. "What if it's not enough? What if Tristan convinces a judge that I'm unfit?" "Look at her," Ronan gestured to where Amelia was giggling, reaching for a toy while Kaiser watched attentively. "Any judge with eyes will see what we see. This isn't just about proving the hospital wrong anymore. It's about showing there's a better way." Dr. Porter arrived later that afternoon with more recording equipment. "I've been consulting with colleagues in veterinary rehabilitation," she explained, setting up a small camera. "They're fascinated by Kaiser's techniques. What he's doing, combining physical support with emotional encouragement, it's exactly what these children need." They spent the next few hours meticulously documenting every interaction. Kaiser demonstrating how to brace for standing. Amelia copying his head movements, strengthening her neck muscles. The way he'd position toys just slightly out of reach, encouraging her to stretch safely. "Look at this," Dr. Porter exclaimed, reviewing the footage. When she starts to fatigue, he immediately adjusts his position to provide more support. That's not just training, that's assessment and adaptation. Brielle watched the video, seeing her daughter's determination in a new light. She's not just responding to him, she realized. She's learning from him. He's teaching her how to be strong. Which is exactly what the program was designed to do, Ronan added, before Haskins shut it down. That evening, after Amelia was asleep, and Kaiser settled beside her crib, Brielle reviewed their growing collection of evidence with Ronan and Dr. Porter. Medical observations, progress notes, video documentation, and statements from former program staff. It was becoming impossible to dismiss. "We're not just fighting for Kaiser anymore," Brielle said, looking at her allies. "We're fighting for every child who could benefit from this kind of support. Every family that deserves better than cold hospital policies." Dr. Porter nodded firmly. "And we're fighting for the truth. What happened to this program? To these dogs? It wasn't right." "The hospital can't bury this twice," Ronan added. "Not with everything we're gathering." As if sensing their discussion, Kaiser padded into the room, checking on them before returning to Amelia. His dedication never wavered, even as his own health declined. Watching him, Brielle felt her determination solidify into something unshakable. They were building more than a case. They were building hope. Hope for Amelia, hope for other children like her, and hope that sometimes, when enough people stand together, even the most entrenched systems can change. Dr. Porter packed up her equipment, pausing to scratch Kaiser's ears. "Same time tomorrow? We should document her morning exercises." Brielle nodded, grateful for these allies who understood what was at stake. Together, they were creating a record that couldn't be ignored. Proof that sometimes the most powerful medicine comes with 4 paws and an unwavering heart. The morning sun filtered through the living room windows as Brielle sorted through another stack of documents spread across her coffee table. Her hands trembled slightly as she read the latest letter from Tristan's lawyer. The words, "emergency petition" and "immediate home inspection" seemed to leap off the page, making her stomach twist into knots. "They're not wasting any time," Ronan said quietly from where he sat beside her, organizing medical records into labeled folders. His normally calm face showed hints of worry as he glanced at the legal documents. Dr. Porter stood by the window, phone pressed to her ear, speaking in hushed but urgent tones with a colleague from the veterinary board. Kaiser lay at Amelia's feet while the little girl practiced her exercises, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her. 3 days, Brielle whispered, her voice catching. "They're giving us 3 days to prepare for this inspection. Tristan knows exactly what he's doing, hitting us before we're ready." The petition, filed jointly by Tristan and Dr. Haskins, painted a damning picture. An unstable mother defying medical advice, endangering her child with an aging, sick dog, and showing persistent poor judgment in medical decisions. They demanded an immediate assessment of the home environment, with the clear threat that failure could result in both loss of custody and removal of Kaiser. Ronan reached over and squeezed her hand. "Hey, look at me. We've got this. Look at everything we've already gathered." He gestured to the stacks of organized evidence surrounding them. "Dr. Porter's documentation is incredible, and we've got video proof of Amelia's progress." Dr. Porter finished her call and joined them, her practical nature taking charge. "I've arranged for 2 more veterinary specialists to review our footage. They're willing to provide expert statements about Kaiser's therapeutic techniques." She sat down, pulling out her tablet to show them the latest videos they'd captured. On screen, Kaiser demonstrated his remarkable training. He gently guided Amelia through movement exercises, showing incredible patience as she worked to strengthen her fragile muscles. When she tired, he adjusted his position, providing just enough support to keep her safe, while still encouraging independence. "Look at her face," Brielle pointed out, emotion catching in her throat. "She's not just moving better, she's confident, happy. How can they not see what this means?" "Because they don't want to see it," Ronan replied grimly. "Haskins especially. Admitting Kaiser's value means admitting he was wrong to shut down the program in the first place." They worked through the morning, organizing their evidence into clear categories: medical progress reports, video documentation, expert testimonials, and training records. Ronan had managed to track down 2 former handlers from the original program who were willing to testify about Kaiser's specialized training and the program's success before its abrupt termination. Around noon, Amelia began to fuss, and Kaiser immediately alerted Brielle by pawing gently at her leg. "Lunchtime," Brielle said, managing a small smile. "At least some things stay simple." As she prepared Amelia's meal, Dr. Porter and Ronan continued their work. They'd created a timeline showing Amelia's improvements since Kaiser entered her life, correlating each milestone with specific therapeutic interactions they'd documented. "We need to make this absolutely clear for the inspector," Dr. Porter insisted, marking key points on their timeline. "Show them that this isn't just a pet providing comfort. This is structured, professional support with measurable results." The afternoon brought more challenges as they received additional paperwork from Tristan's lawyers. They were demanding extensive medical records, questioning every decision Brielle had made since leaving the hospital. The pressure felt overwhelming, but watching Kaiser work with Amelia helped steady her resolve. "Look at this," Ronan called out, holding up an old file he'd uncovered. "Training certificates, health screenings, performance evaluations, all from Kaiser's time in the program. They prove he was specifically trained for children with conditions like Amelia's." Brielle took the documents with shaking hands. "This is what Haskins tried to bury," she realized. "Proof that the program worked, that dogs like Kaiser could make a real difference." They spent hours preparing the house for inspection, ensuring everything was immaculate while still clearly showing Kaiser's therapeutic role. They set up stations where they'd documented his work with Amelia, complete with before and after videos playing on tablets. Dr. Porter helped arrange Amelia's medical equipment and therapy tools, showing how Kaiser integrated with each element. "We'll demonstrate that he's not just present during therapy, he's an essential part of it." As evening approached, exhaustion began to set in. Brielle watched Amelia sleeping peacefully in her special bed, Kaiser maintaining his faithful vigil nearby. The sight of them together strengthened her determination. "I won't let them separate them," she said firmly. "Not when we can prove how much he helps her." Ronan stood beside her, his steady presence offering comfort. "They thought they could overwhelm you with this surprise inspection. Instead, they've given us the perfect opportunity to show exactly what they're trying to destroy." Dr. Porter joined them, reviewing their preparation checklist one final time. "We've got medical evidence, expert testimony, documentation of progress, and proof of Kaiser's training. Now we just need to present it in a way they can't dismiss." The next 2 days would be crucial. They had to refine their presentation, prepare for every possible question, and ensure that the inspector would see the truth. That Kaiser wasn't a liability but a lifeline, not just for Amelia but potentially for countless other children who could benefit from similar support. As night fell, Brielle sat with her allies, surrounded by their mounting evidence and strengthening case. The petition meant to break them had instead united them more firmly. Every document they organized, every video they reviewed, every statement they gathered built their defense higher. Tomorrow would bring more preparation, more challenges. But for now, Brielle found comfort in knowing she wasn't fighting alone. Together they would protect not just Amelia and Kaiser, but the truth about a program that should never have been hidden in the first place. The evening had settled into a quiet rhythm as Brielle made final preparations for tomorrow's inspection. Winter's chill had crept into the house, prompting her to plug in the old space heater in Amelia's nursery. The small device hummed steadily, warming the room to a comfortable temperature for her fragile daughter. Just a few more things to organize, Brielle murmured to herself, sorting through the last of their documentation in the living room. The clock on the wall showed 11:30 at night. She knew she should sleep, but anxiety about tomorrow's inspection kept her mind racing. Kaiser lay in his usual spot beside Amelia's crib, his chest rising and falling in steady breaths. The gentle whir of medical monitors provided their familiar background symphony. Everything seemed normal, peaceful even, despite the pressure of what awaited them in the morning. Brielle rubbed her tired eyes, trying to focus on the papers in front of her. The house was silent except for the soft mechanical sounds from Amelia's room, the monitors, the humidifier, and that space heater working overtime against the winter cold. Then Kaiser's head snapped up. The German shepherd's ears pricked forward, his body tensing. Before Brielle could process what was wrong, he was on his feet, nose testing the air. A low growl rumbled in his chest. That's when she smelled it, the acrid scent of burning plastic. Smoke began seeping under Amelia's door. "No!" Brielle screamed, launching herself toward the nursery. The smoke grew thicker with each step, and as she reached for the door handle, intense heat radiated through the wood. She yanked her hand back with a cry of pain. Inside, she heard Amelia beginning to cough. Kaiser didn't hesitate. The massive shepherd slammed his shoulder against the door, forcing it open. Flames licked up the wall behind the malfunctioning space heater, spreading rapidly across the dry winter air. The smoke was thick, black, choking. Brielle tried to follow Kaiser in, but a blast of heat and smoke drove her back. Her lungs burned as she coughed violently, eyes streaming. "Amelia!" she screamed. "Kaiser, get her out!" Through the smoke, she saw Kaiser reach the crib. With incredible gentleness despite the urgency, he gripped the edge of Amelia's blanket in his teeth, carefully dragging her from the crib. The baby was crying now, the sound muffled by the roar of growing flames. But before Kaiser could reach the door with his precious cargo, there was an ominous crack from above. Brielle watched in horror as a burning support beam crashed down, blocking the doorway in a shower of sparks and flaming debris. "No, no, Amelia!" Brielle tried to force her way through, but the heat was unbearable. The flames had spread to the ceiling now, consuming everything in their path. She could barely see through the thick smoke, could barely breathe. Inside the room, Kaiser made a split-second decision. Unable to reach the door, he carefully positioned himself over Amelia, using his body as a shield against the falling embers and thickening smoke. The shepherd's powerful frame curved protectively around the tiny girl, keeping her as close to the floor as possible, where the air was clearest. Brielle could hear the terrifying sound of the fire consuming the room, could see flashes of Kaiser's fur through the smoke and flames as he maintained his protective stance over her daughter. The heat was overwhelming, the roar of the fire deafening. She screamed for help, praying someone would come in time. The flames climbed higher, trapping Kaiser and Amelia in a deadly ring of fire. Through gaps in the smoke, Brielle could see Kaiser holding absolutely still, shielding Amelia even as embers singed his fur. Her daughter's cries had grown weaker, but she was still moving under Kaiser's protective body. The sound of sirens pierced the night, but they seemed impossibly far away. Smoke filled the entire house now. Brielle fought to stay conscious, to keep her eyes on that doorway where her whole world was trapped behind a wall of flames. The fire's orange glow reflected in Kaiser's eyes as he stared back at her, unflinching in his duty to protect the child beneath him. More debris fell from the ceiling as the fire ate through the structure of the house. Kaiser didn't move an inch, absorbing each impact that might have struck Amelia. His fur was smoking now, but still he held his position, keeping her daughter safe in the small pocket of survivable air beneath his body. The flames rose higher, the heat more intense with each passing second. Brielle could hear the fire trucks getting closer, but time seemed to stretch endlessly as she watched Kaiser maintain his protective vigil over Amelia, both of them trapped behind that burning barrier while the room burned around them. Through the hellish orange glow of the flames, Amelia lay beneath Kaiser's protective form, her tiny face pressed against his chest. The smoke made her eyes sting, but she felt oddly safe in the pocket of space Kaiser had created with his body. His fur was hot against her skin, and she could feel his rapid heartbeat as he held position despite the falling debris. "Amelia, baby, please!" Her mother's voice cut through the roar of the fire, raw with desperation. Something stirred in Amelia's chest at the sound, a primal need to reach her mother. For the first time in her life, her fragile body felt charged with purpose rather than limitation. She pressed her small hands against the floor, fingers spreading with determination. Kaiser sensed her movement. Despite his exhaustion, he shifted slightly, creating just enough space for her to move while still shielding her from the worst of the heat and smoke. His dark eyes watched intently as she gathered her courage. The fallen beam blazed before them, but there was a small gap near the floor, just big enough for a tiny girl to squeeze through. Amelia took a shuddering breath and began to move. Her muscles, unused to such demands, trembled with the effort. Every movement was a battle against her body's limitations, but her mother's voice called to her like a beacon. "That's it, sweetie," Kaiser seemed to say with his gentle nudge against her back. "You can do this." Inch by painful inch, Amelia began to crawl. Her knees scraped against the floor, and her arms shook with each forward motion. The heat was intense, making every breath a struggle, but she kept going, Kaiser moving with her step for step, still maintaining his protective cover. When she reached the beam, she hesitated. The wood was hot, threatening to burn her delicate skin. Kaiser pressed closer, using his body to create a barrier between her and the scorching timber. With trembling determination, Amelia began to edge beneath the gap. "Amelia." Her mother's voice was closer now, filled with hope and fear. "I see you, baby. Keep coming." The effort was enormous. Amelia's muscles screamed in protest as she pushed herself forward. Her bones, so prone to breaking, felt like they might shatter with each movement. But something stronger than fear drove her on: love for her mother and desperate concern for Kaiser, whose breathing had become labored behind her. Kaiser, despite his failing strength, continued to support her progress. When her courage faltered, he would press his nose gently against her back, urging her forward. When debris fell, he would shift to take the impact, never letting a single ember touch her. Suddenly, there was a tremendous crash from somewhere in the house, and the sound of splintering wood. The floor beneath them shuddered ominously. Kaiser whined urgently, nudging Amelia with more insistence. Just as she cleared the beam, a familiar voice boomed through the chaos. "Brielle, where are they?" It was Ronan, his paramedics training evident in his authoritative tone. "Here! They're here!" Brielle screamed. Through the thick smoke, Ronan's powerful figure appeared in the doorway. He wore only a t-shirt and jeans, clearly having rushed over without protective gear. Without hesitation, he vaulted over the burning beam, scooping Amelia into his arms in one fluid motion. "Kaiser!" Amelia cried out, reaching for her protector, who still lay on the other side of the beam. Ronan passed Amelia to Brielle, who clutched her daughter close, sobbing with relief. Then he turned back for Kaiser. The German Shepherd was struggling to stand, his strength finally giving out after his heroic efforts. His fur was singed, and his breathing was ragged. "Come on, boy," Ronan encouraged, wrapping his arms around Kaiser's chest. The dog was heavy, but Ronan's adrenaline gave him the strength he needed. Together, they stumbled through the doorway just as the ceiling began to cave in behind them. The race down the smoke-filled hallway seemed endless. Ronan half-carried, half-dragged Kaiser, while Brielle ran ahead with Amelia. They burst out of the front door into the blessed, cool night air just as fire trucks screamed to a halt in front of the house. In the front yard, Kaiser's legs finally gave out. He collapsed onto the grass, his sides heaving with each labored breath. His heart, already weakened by disease, had been pushed to its absolute limit by his heroic efforts. "No, no, no," Brielle whispered, kneeling beside him while still holding Amelia. "Hold on, Kaiser. Please hold on." Amelia reached out with a tiny hand to touch Kaiser's singed fur. "Up," she pleaded. "Kaiser, up." Ronan was already on his phone, calling Dr. Porter. "We need to get them both to the hospital right now," he said firmly. "I'll drive." Brielle hesitated for just a moment, remembering their last devastating encounter with the hospital. But looking at Kaiser's struggling form and feeling Amelia's racing heartbeat against her chest, she knew they had no choice. She nodded. Ronan gathered Kaiser in his arms once more, struggling under the weight but refusing to give up. Together they hurried to his truck, where he laid Kaiser across the back seat. Brielle climbed in beside him, cradling Amelia against her shoulder, her other hand resting on Kaiser's heaving side. As they sped through the dark streets, sirens wailing behind them at the burning house, Brielle whispered prayers of gratitude and desperation. Amelia, still watching Kaiser with worried eyes, kept her small hand pressed against his fur, as if trying to give back some of the strength he had spent protecting her. The hospital's emergency entrance loomed before them, its harsh lights both a promise of help and a reminder of past rejection. But tonight, there was no time for fear or hesitation. Kaiser's life hung in the balance, and Amelia needed to be checked for smoke inhalation. Together, this unlikely family faced the hospital doors, united by love and the miracle they had just witnessed. The emergency room burst into activity as they arrived. Despite the late hour, staff rushed to meet them, though their expressions changed from professional concern to recognition when they saw Brielle and Kaiser. Dr. Porter was already waiting, having called ahead after Ronan's alert. "Treatment room 3 for the child, and we need the veterinary station set up in the auxiliary room," Dr. Porter commanded, taking control of the situation before anyone could object. Her authority carried weight. She had privileges at both the human and veterinary wings of the hospital. As nurses carefully examined Amelia, their eyes widened at what they discovered. The senior nurse, Martha, called for Dr. Porter immediately. "Doctor, you need to see these scans." Dr. Porter studied the X-rays intently, her expression shifting from concern to amazement. "Brielle, look at this," she said, pointing to the images. "These microfractures, they're healing. And look here, there's new bone formation. This kind of strengthening, it's unprecedented in Amelia's case." Brielle stared at the images, hardly daring to believe. "What does it mean?" "The movement during the fire. It must have triggered something. Controlled stress on bones can actually help them grow stronger, but Amelia's condition made that impossible before. Tonight, when she had no choice but to move." Dr. Porter shook her head in wonder. She broke through that barrier. Meanwhile, in the auxiliary room, veterinary specialists worked desperately to stabilize Kaiser. His heart rate was erratic, his breathing labored. Dr. Porter divided her attention between both. Patients, knowing how intertwined their fates had become. Ronan had been busy too. He'd called the fire department, requesting their official report be expedited. Within hours, he had their preliminary findings, and more importantly, their security camera footage from the trucks that had arrived at the scene. The evidence was irrefutable. The cameras had captured Kaiser dragging Amelia from the burning room, shielding her with his own body. When hospital administration tried to enforce their no animals policy, Ronan played the footage on his tablet right there in the emergency room. "This dog just saved her life," he stated firmly, "and there's more." He proceeded to show them the videos they'd been collecting of Kaiser's therapy work with Amelia. The careful positioning, the encouragement, the slow but steady progress. Dr. Porter added her medical documentation, showing the correlation between Kaiser's interventions and Amelia's improving bone density. The hospital's legal team huddled in a corner, whispering urgently. They couldn't ignore the mounting evidence, or the potential public relations nightmare if they tried to separate the child from her life-saving companion again. Dr. Haskins arrived, summoned by the commotion. His face darkened when he saw Kaiser, but before he could speak, a senior administrator pulled him aside. Their heated whispers carried through the hall. "The press is already calling. Social media is picking up the story. We can't fight this." Within hours, hospital policy underwent an emergency revision. Kaiser would be allowed to stay with Amelia during her treatment, under supervised conditions. Animal-assisted therapy was provisionally approved for her case, with Dr. Porter overseeing the protocol. The news spread quickly. Local media picked up the story of the heroic dog who had not only saved a child from fire, but had been secretly helping her heal all along. When reporters dug deeper, they uncovered the truth about the hospital's disbanded therapy dog program and Dr. Haskins' role in its termination. Tristan arrived at the hospital the next morning, legal papers in hand, ready to use the fire as evidence of Brielle's unfitness as a mother. But he walked into a storm of public sentiment he hadn't anticipated. Reporters questioned him about his previous absence from Amelia's life, his opposition to her therapy dog, his attempts to separate a child from her life-saving companion. His custody petition crumbled under the scrutiny. His lawyer quietly advised him to withdraw before the publicity damaged his reputation further. Tristan left the hospital in defeat, hounded by questions he couldn't answer. For a few precious days, everything seemed perfect. Amelia's therapy sessions showed remarkable progress. With Kaiser by her side, she began attempting small movements she'd never dared before. The dog's presence gave her confidence, while his careful positioning provided the support she needed. Dr. Porter developed a comprehensive rehabilitation plan incorporating Kaiser's natural instincts with professional physical therapy. Other doctors came to observe, amazed by the bond between child and dog, and the measurable improvements in Amelia's condition. Brielle dared to hope, watching her daughter grow stronger each day. The hospital staff who had once been obstacles became allies, impressed by Kaiser's gentle intelligence and protective devotion. Even the most skeptical doctors couldn't deny the results they were seeing. But Kaiser was tired. The fire had taken its toll on his already weakened heart. During therapy sessions, he would need longer rest periods. His movements, while still gentle and precise with Amelia, became slower. Dr. Porter monitored him closely, adjusting his heart medication, but the strain of that heroic night had been too much. One afternoon, during a quiet therapy session, Kaiser was helping Amelia practice sitting up. He positioned himself behind her, as he had done hundreds of times before, providing a steady support for her to lean against. Amelia was chattering happily, her small hands gripping his fur for balance. Then, without any warning, Kaiser's eyes closed. He slumped slowly to the side, his great head coming to rest gently on the therapy mat. Amelia turned to look at him, confusion crossing her face. "Kaiser?" she said softly, patting his muzzle. "Up?" But Kaiser didn't respond. His heart, which had given so much love and protection, had quietly stopped. He had held on long enough to see Amelia's breakthrough, to know that she was growing stronger, to ensure that the world finally understood what she needed. Then, like the faithful guardian he had always been, he had slipped away while still at his post, still supporting her. The room fell silent except for Amelia's confused calls to her friend. Dr. Porter quickly checked for vital signs, but she already knew. Tears fell from her eyes as she shook her head at Brielle, who had rushed to Kaiser's side. "No," Brielle whispered, gathering Amelia in her arms. "No, please, not now." But Kaiser was gone, his final act of service complete. He had given everything he had, his strength, his devotion, and ultimately his life, to help Amelia find her own strength. In death, as in life, he remained by her side until he was certain his job was done. The hospital room felt colder without Kaiser's warm presence. Brielle sat in the corner chair, her shoulders hunched with the weight of guilt and grief. She watched Amelia's small hand reaching out, patting the empty space beside her therapy mat where Kaiser should have been. "I'm so sorry, baby," Brielle whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." Every time Amelia called out, "KK," it was like a knife in Brielle's heart. She couldn't stop thinking about how she had pushed Kaiser to keep going, to keep helping, even when Dr. Porter had warned them about his heart condition. The devoted dog had never once hesitated or shown reluctance. But Brielle tortured herself with thoughts of what she should have done differently. Ronan brought her coffee, his steady presence a quiet comfort in the sterile hospital room. He pulled up a chair beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You can't do this to yourself, Brielle," he said softly. Kaiser knew exactly what he was doing. That's who he was trained to be. "I should have protected him," Brielle replied, wiping tears from her cheeks. "He gave everything for us, and I just kept asking for more." "Look at her," Ronan gestured toward Amelia, who was working with her physical therapist. "Really look at her. She's sitting up longer, reaching farther. Kaiser did that. He knew what mattered most." Brielle watched her daughter, noting the determined set of her tiny jaw, an expression that reminded her so much of Kaiser's focused gaze. The physical therapist was praising Amelia's improved core strength, marking measurements on her chart with evident excitement. A knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Porter entered, her face tight with concern. She gestured for Brielle to step into the hallway. "I thought you should know," Dr. Porter said in low tones. "Dr. Haskins is already moving to restrict the animal therapy program again. He's citing Kaiser's death as proof that the strain is too much for service animals." Brielle felt her grief crystallize into something harder, sharper. "He's what?" "He's preparing new guidelines that would effectively eliminate most animal-assisted therapy options. He's using Kaiser's heart condition as justification." "After everything Kaiser proved?" Brielle's voice rose. "After all the progress Amelia's made?" "He's calling it a liability issue," Dr. Porter explained. "Says he's protecting both patients and animals." Ronan had followed them into the hallway. His jaw clenched as he listened. "He's protecting himself. This is about covering up his past mistakes with the original program." Brielle turned to stare through the window at Amelia, who was still reaching for her absent friend. The sight of her daughter's confusion and loss sparked something fierce in her chest. Kaiser hadn't died for nothing. He hadn't given his life just to have his legacy erased by bureaucratic maneuvering. "No," Brielle said firmly. "We're not letting this happen. Kaiser left us proof, videos, medical records, testimony from other doctors. He gave us everything we need to fight this. It won't be easy, Dr. Porter warned. Haskins has influence with the board. I don't care, Brielle straightened her shoulders. Kaiser never gave up on Amelia. I won't give up on making sure other children get the same chance he gave her. Ronan squeezed her shoulder. You're not in this alone. We've got documentation, we've got witnesses, and we've got the truth. Haskins can't bury this again. Brielle nodded, feeling her determination grow stronger. The grief was still there, raw and aching. But now it had purpose. She wouldn't let Kaiser's sacrifice be in vain. She wouldn't let Haskins destroy the possibility of hope for other families like hers. She walked back into Amelia's room, gathering her daughter into her arms. Kaiser taught us how to be brave, didn't he, sweet girl? She whispered into Amelia's hair. And that's exactly what we're going to be. In the days that followed, Brielle's dining room transformed into a war room. Papers covered every surface, and laptops hummed with video footage being edited and organized. Dr. Porter had brought stacks of medical journals documenting the benefits of animal-assisted therapy, while Ronan contributed his research into Kaiser's training program history. Amelia watched them work from her specialized walker, her small hands gripping the supports as she practiced standing. The walker had been Kaiser's last gift. His guidance had strengthened her enough to use it. Look at this, Dr. Porter said, spreading out a chart showing Amelia's bone density improvements. The correlation between Kaiser's physical therapy sessions and her strengthening is undeniable. Brielle nodded, adding the chart to their growing presentation. And here's the video from 3 weeks ago, Kaiser teaching her to brace herself using the therapy blocks. They watched the footage together. Kaiser deliberately positioning blocks, nudging Amelia's arms into proper positions, demonstrating weight-bearing poses that she would mimic. The dog's intelligence and gentle persistence shone through every frame. The board needs to see this, Ronan said, marking specific timestamps. It proves he wasn't just providing emotional support, he was implementing actual physical therapy techniques. Amelia shuffled forward in her walker, reaching for the laptop screen when she saw Kaiser's image. KK, she said softly. Brielle pulled her daughter close. That's right, sweetie. We're showing everyone how special Kaiser was. Dr. Porter sorted through more documents. I've found records from the original service dog program, the one Haskins shut down. There were dozens of success stories before it was terminated. Why did they let him bury it? Brielle asked, helping Amelia adjust her stance in the walker. Politics, liability concerns, budget issues, Ronan explained, but mostly because no one fought back hard enough. No one had the evidence we have now. They worked late into the evening, refining their presentation. Brielle organized their materials into clear, compelling segments: Kaiser's background and training, his work with Amelia, the medical data supporting their success, and finally, the broader implications for pediatric care. As they reviewed their work, Amelia stood longer than ever before, watching them with bright, interested eyes. Her strength was Kaiser's living legacy, proof that his methods worked, that his dedication had created real, measurable change. Tomorrow, Brielle said, gathering their materials, we show them exactly what Kaiser gave us, and we make sure no other family has to fight this hard for help their children deserve. The hospital boardroom buzzed with tension as Brielle stood at the podium, Amelia secure in her walker beside her. Board members filled the long table, their faces a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Dr. Haskins sat rigidly at one end, his expression carefully neutral. My daughter is standing here today because of a dog you banned, Brielle began, her voice steady. A dog whose training program you buried, Dr. Haskins, and whose death could have been prevented if this hospital hadn't forced him to work in secret. She clicked through her presentation, showing clips of Kaiser guiding Amelia through therapy exercises. The room fell silent as they watched the German Shepherd's methodical, gentle instruction. Kaiser wasn't just providing comfort, Dr. Porter added from her seat. He was implementing specialized physical therapy techniques that were developed right here in the program this hospital abandoned. Reporters lined the back wall, their cameras capturing every moment. The story had caught fire on social media after the house fire, with thousands sharing their own stories of service animals making breakthrough differences in medical care. Brielle presented the medical data next, charts tracking Amelia's bone density improvements, mobility gains, and decreased fracture incidents. "These aren't just numbers," she said. "This is my daughter's quality of life. A quality of life that improved because Kaiser refused to abandon his training, even when this hospital abandoned him." The board members leaned forward, examining the evidence. One elderly doctor removed his glasses, wiping them slowly. "Dr. Haskins," he said, "these results are remarkable. Why weren't we informed of the original program's success rates?" Dr. Haskins shifted uncomfortably. "There were liability concerns. One incident that you used to justify shutting down an entire successful program," Brielle interrupted. "How many children could have benefited in the years since? How many families struggled needlessly?" Pressure mounted as more board members began questioning Haskins. The evidence was overwhelming: documentation of other successful cases, testimony from former program participants, Kaiser's own training records. Finally, Dr. Haskins's careful composure cracked. "Yes, I buried the program," he admitted. "After the incident, our insurance premiums threatened to skyrocket. I was trying to protect the hospital's financial stability." "At the cost of children's well-being," a board member noted sharply. "By prioritizing paperwork over patients," another added. The board chairman called for a vote. One by one, hands raised in support of reinstating a formal service dog program. Dr. Haskins was officially censured, his authority over the program removed. "In recognition of exceptional service and sacrifice," the chairman announced, "the new Pediatric Service Dog Initiative will be named the Kaiser Program. Mrs. Lawson, your dog's legacy will help countless children." Brielle felt tears welling up as Amelia reached for her hand. She could almost feel Kaiser's presence beside them, his mission finally recognized, his work carried forward by others who would follow his path. The justice Kaiser deserved had finally been delivered. His dedication would no longer have to operate in shadows, and other children like Amelia would find their own four-legged angels, openly welcomed and supported by the very institution that had once turned them away. The chairman rose, extending his hand to Brielle. "Thank you for fighting for this truth. Sometimes it takes one person's courage to correct an entire system's mistake." Amelia stood tall in her walker, stronger than ever, living proof of what Kaiser's love and training had achieved. His spirit would live on in every child who found new strength through the program that now bore his name. Spring sunshine streamed through the newly installed windows of the rebuilt Lawson home. The fresh paint smell still lingered in the air, mixing with the sweet scent of hope and new beginnings. In the living room, where tragedy had once struck, now stood testament to resilience and renewal. Amelia, her legs much stronger after months of dedicated therapy, gripped her walking frame with determination. Her eyes sparkled with joy as she focused on the 8-week-old German Shepherd puppy sitting patiently across the room. Valor, aptly named for his brave predecessor, watched her with intelligent brown eyes that seemed wise beyond his young age. "Go on, sweetheart," Brielle encouraged softly from where she stood. "Show Valor how far you can walk today." Ronan's steady hand rested on Brielle's shoulder, his presence a quiet comfort she'd grown to cherish over the months of rebuilding both their home and their lives. The silver band on her ring finger caught the sunlight, a recent addition that symbolized their growing family. Amelia took a wobbly step forward, then another. Her movements were slow but purposeful, each step more confident than the last. Valor stayed perfectly still, already showing signs of the specialized training he'd received through the Kaiser program. "That's it, Princess," Ronan cheered quietly. "You're doing great." When Amelia reached the halfway point, Valor stood up, tail wagging gently. He moved forward slowly, matching her pace, positioning himself perfectly at her side, just as Kaiser had done countless times before. The sight brought tears to Brielle's eyes, not of sadness this time, but of gratitude. "Look, Mommy," Amelia beamed, her voice strong and clear. "Valor knows just what to do." Indeed, the puppy seemed to carry Kaiser's spirit in his careful movements and gentle demeanor. The Kaiser program had carefully selected and trained him, ensuring he would be ready to carry on the legacy of service that his predecessor had so nobly established. Brielle leaned into Ronan's embrace as they watched Amelia complete her journey across the room. This was their miracle, not a sudden magic cure, but the product of unwavering loyalty, tremendous sacrifice, and the courage to stand up for what was right. Every wobbly step forward was a victory, every smile a reminder that love could rebuild what fire had destroyed. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.